given what we've seen happening over the last several days with regards to the global economy, 10% knocked off the value of the global economy, 3.6 trillion knocked off the US market alone, is the market justified in the panic selling that we've been seeing?
Is the market justified?
Yes.
In the panic. Thank you. First of all, I should say this virus is a new one, novel virus, so there are many unknowns. But through time, we're learning more and more, and we're trying to understand it. But if you see the current situation in China, where it started, the number of cases is now on the decline. And many provinces are not reporting corona cases. In the rest of the world, we get actually more cases being reported on a daily basis, more cases than China is reporting. So the last 3-4 days, that's what's happening. But at the same time, if you go into the details of the numbers, the current number of cases in the rest of the world outside China is around 6,000. And as you know, we have 6.2 billion population outside China. The number of cases is small. So one thing, as WHO have been saying, is because of the intervention that China was taking, the spread of the virus to the rest of the world was slow. That's why we have the number of cases in the rest of the world less. And we need to use this window of opportunity to contain the virus. It's not panic or fear that we need now. What we need now is, of course, we will have concerns, of course, we will have worries. That's natural. But what we need is, without panic and fear, to focus, calm down and focus and do the right things. Otherwise, panic and fear, not only the economy, can affect the economy, it may have political and social implications too. Even more dangerous things can come. So we need to see the reality and take appropriate actions based on the reality. Then I will go again into the numbers. Around 50 countries are affected now. Do you know that more than 50% of them have only reported one case? And do you know that more than 8 countries have not reported cases, those who have reported before, but have not reported cases in the last 2 weeks? And most of the countries who reported had reported less than 30 cases, majority. And also, do you know that the severity of although the virus spreads fast, but at the same time, the severity is actually less because we have more than 80% mild cases. So we need to go into the numbers, we need to go into the facts and do the right things instead of panicking. And countries, based on their situation, doing risk assessments, of course, should take actions proportional to the risk that they're assessing. And they may have economic and other implications. They should expect that. But panic and fear is actually the worst. It's actually more impactful than the virus itself. And that's why we have to be very careful. And then having said this, there is a recommendation from media and from some experts and some politicians to call this outbreak or epidemic a pandemic. As far as WHO is concerned, we don't believe that we have reached that pandemic level. There is a potential, and anything can go in any direction. There is a potential to be pandemic. But now, from the assessment we have, from the global assessment and national assessments we have, we don't see intensive and sustained community transmission in multiple countries. Meaning, the facts on the ground don't show that. But there are clusterings like in South Korea, in Iran, and also in Italy that may go, these clusterings may go into community sustained intensive transmission, and maybe in other countries too. When this happens, then it may qualify to have the pandemic definition.
What is the threshold? Just so that we're clear, if you could clarify that for us. What is the pandemic threshold? When we get to a certain point, then it is a pandemic.
So it's the transmission, the community transmission in multiple countries. And we're following that 24/7. So the advice we're giving to the world is, what we should do now should be a comprehensive approach. We need to do containment to contain the virus. Even as we speak, there are countries who have already contained some of the cases they got. And in China, it's on the decline. So there is already evidence that it can be contained. So we shouldn't abandon the containment strategy, because we see it's working in some countries. If you move into pandemic, you're saying containment will not be possible. So it's like a decision to live with the virus, and we will say, okay, let's do only mitigation, so we live with the virus. But that is going to be a mistake. We are not there yet. So the best approach we have is based on country-level risk assessments, global assessments, to do the containment while preparing for any eventualities for a potential pandemic. We do everything. So it's a comprehensive approach. Or Tony Fauci, my good friend, who is a US epidemiologist, incredible capacity, calls it blended approach. That's how we can get better, by investing in a comprehensive approach. And no panic, no fear. We need to focus. Of course, concerns and worries are there. There should be. But we should be calm down and work. And stigma also should be avoided, which we are seeing and which is dangerous. This virus is everybody's enemy. Everybody's enemy. And as human beings, we should stand in unison. Discriminating and stigma is the worst. It's more dangerous than the virus itself. Thank you.
In terms of that, the WHO has said that this should be a reality check for governments globally. Do you believe that global financial markets need a reality check, given what you've just said about fear and panic?
Yes, global markets, it's to everybody, by the way. They should calm down and try to see the reality, as you said, reality check, facts, figures, and decide based on that. Rational. We need to continue to be rational. Irrationality doesn't help. We need to go back into the facts and the figures, and based on that we decide.
There have been a lot of reports, not just out of China, about what the Chinese government knew when they knew it, but also specifically about Iran. Do you believe you can trust the facts and figures coming from the Iranian government?
To say that, you need to assess. I cannot say, I cannot comment on this without having a proper assessment, having experts on the ground, and so on.
Have you spoken to the Iranian government about putting experts on the ground?
Yes, we work with them. We send teams, and the next team with logistics, medical supplies, and so on will be leaving on Monday. Thank you to the generous support from the United Arab Emirates. That's what I said, solidarity, and we're helping them. There is, of course, one of the areas where we have clustering of cases, and we need to be acting aggressively and help them to act aggressively.
When you think about this within the context of humanitarian collaboration, you need to know that the governments you're speaking to are giving you truthful answers in order to help them, in order to calm fears, not just in that country, but globally. Does that worry you?
Of course, if somebody is not telling the truth, it worries. But at the same time, I wouldn't also frame any country without any reason or without having any fact towards that.
You're not worried about the fact that the Iranian government is giving separate figures than what we're seeing reported in the media?
You know, there are reports who come from the media, several. But this is, WHO, as you know, is a technical organization and should check the facts. We cannot just say what a journalist says. Even some colleagues told me, oh, the journalist had done forensic something, so this is true, and so on. I'm not talking about Iran, but even on other issues. Then I said, if we follow a journalist's report, whether it's well done or not, then where do we end? It means we will be repeating a journalist report. So that's why we have our own mechanism. And from our own mechanism, we haven't seen that. But if we see, then of course we should address it, mitigate.
You have your own people now on the ground in Iran.
Yes.
You do. Okay.
We are sending on Monday. There were a group who visited and returned, but we will have a bigger team on Monday.
When you look at this in terms of the response from various countries, U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday announced that they have 43 million masks and that the country is prepared for coronavirus. Do you believe that the response from the U.S. government is the best response it could be?
You know, to fight this coronavirus, you need to have a whole government approach. And that's what U.S. is doing by appointing Vice President Pence, so all sectors be involved. And you're following, I hope, the technical agencies like CDC also, briefing on regular basis and boosting their preparations. So if you do that too, that means, you know, the case identification, follow-up, everything that we do is in good hands. So from the political side and technical side, if you see from the two sides, they're doing everything that they can.
And specifically to Italy, given the construct of the European Union without borders, how worried are you about the spread of COVID-19 from Italy and beyond? Because we've seen it spreading rapidly.
Europe may have some surprises like Italy. You know, other developed countries in Europe may have surprises. But at the same time, what's good about Europe is they have strong institutions, so they can revamp quickly and address it. So that's what I believe. But I was saying last week, it's not just about Italy. There could be surprises in other European countries in the neighborhood too, and prepare well. But even for Italy, since they have strong institutions, I know they will manage it as quickly as possible.
Does that mean potentially shutting borders? Are we there yet?
There are many ways, by the way, there are many strategies that we use, and the country should assess its situation, understand the risk, assess the risk, and then take measures proportionate to the risk. It's up to the country.
Director General, when you think about this in terms of what your plans are going forward in terms of communication with the media, I know that there was in the past a lot of pressure put on WHO as a result of deciding to call something a panic back in 2009, a pandemic. That caused a lot of stress in financial markets. It's caused a lot of panic globally. Does that weigh on your decision process today in terms of at what point you call this a pandemic?
As you may know, we're doing daily press conferences, and our epidemiologists are also doing constant risk assessments. So we get our science-based risk assessments and announce it regularly. For instance, last Friday, we upgraded the risk level based on the findings the global risk level now is very high. It was high until Friday. Now it's very high. So we will constantly check the disease situation or the epidemic situation. And when there is a need to act, I mean, to name it this or that, it can be done. And that's what we're doing. In addition to the daily press conferences direct from WHO, we now have special envoys representing all regions. And they're coming to Geneva actually next week, and we will have all the preparations we need, and this will also help in communication at regional levels and helping with at least countries from different regions from their proximity close by.
The CDC last week said that they were preparing for pandemic. When we talk about the collaboration between organizations, isn't it important that you are all on the same page? Because is the WHO preparing also for pandemic?
That's what we said even weeks ago. What we said is, based on the facts on the ground, containment is possible. However, the window of opportunity for containment is narrowing. So, side by side, we need to prepare for a potential pandemic. That's what we called the comprehensive approach. That is the way forward, and that's where we are. But day by day, we see the window of opportunity closing or narrowing. And that's why we're asking countries to really be more aggressive in containment interventions. It pays off. Because, as I said earlier, some countries who had cases a few weeks ago have already contained it. And in China, we're seeing a significant decline. And the containment works. But at the same time, we cannot be sure. This thing may change direction and it may go for worse. So that's why we do containment, but we prepare for the worst or for the pandemics. And the best approach is comprehensive, not either or. We should avoid dichotomy or either or. We should have a comprehensive approach. And that's what we're saying, and that's the best way to go ahead. And this is based on facts and based on progress that we have already made, that we have seen in some countries already.